We hear the word narcissist constantly these days, right? Someone cuts you off in traffic, a boss takes too much credit, or an ex ghosts you, and boom, they're a narcissist. But in this explainer, we're skipping all those mainstream buzzwords. We are going to treat human behavior as evidence in a psychological investigation. We're going to deconstruct a terrifying psychological mystery, peeling back the layers of neuroscience, evolutionary biology, and deep trauma to reveal what is actually happening beneath the surface of narcissistic personality disorder. So, let's just dive right in.
When you think of narcissism, you probably picture, vanity, endless selfies, or just a massively inflated ego. But I want to challenge that assumption right now. What if that supreme arrogance you see on the outside isn't an overflow of self-love at all? What if it's a desperate, highly orchestrated defense mechanism against the catastrophic lack of it? What hides behind that mask of perfect confidence isn't strength. As we're going to see, it's actually something deeply, fundamentally fractured.
According to structural psychoanalysts like Otto Kernberg, narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, is basically a severe structural collapse of the self. Beneath the mask, and whether that mask is loud arrogance or quiet victimhood, there's just this profound emptiness. It's a deep-seated sense of shame and a complete inability to internally regulate their own self-worth. It's like they're completely missing an internal emotional thermostat. So this isn't just about someone acting a little selfishly, we're talking about a foundational psychological void.
So how common is this really? Well, looking at the data, a full clinical diagnosis of NPD is actually pretty rare. We're talking about 0.5% to 1% of the population. But here is the chilling part. Up to 6.2% of people walk among us with severe subclinical narcissistic traits. That is a dangerous chunk of the population operating with behaviors that can absolutely devastate the people they target in their daily lives.
Section 1. The two faces of narcissism, the grandiose and the covert.
We really need to understand how this disorder camouflages itself. We're basically looking at two distinct masks hiding the exact same fragile core. Over on the left, you've got the grandiose narcissist. This is the loud, explosive, arrogant predator we usually imagine, right? They want social domination, they boast, and they treat their partners like trophies. But on the right, you have the covert, or vulnerable narcissist, and this is an insidious, agonizing, slow burn. They seem shy, highly sensitive to criticism, and they love playing the victim. They don't want a trophy partner, they want a caretaker and a punching bag to absorb all their toxic shame. Two completely different presentations, driven by the exact same psychological architecture.
To really grasp what victims face, we can look at the DSM-5 criteria, which you can easily remember with the acronym Special Me. Let's do a rapid-fire rundown. A grand sense of self-importance, preoccupation with power, entitlement, can only be around special people, interpersonally exploitative, arrogant, a total lack of effective empathy, must be admired, and finally, highly envious of others. When you're targeted by someone with these traits, it literally feels like an overwhelming, disorienting tidal wave of manipulation.
Section 2. The biological roots, a brain deficit, not just bad behavior. So what is actually structurally broken inside their brains? Because this isn't just a conscious choice to be cruel, it's a real neurobiological deficit. Brain imaging shows people with NPD have lowered gray matter volume in the medial prefrontal cortex, which is the area tied to empathy and emotional regulation. But even more fascinating is their salience network. In a healthy brain, this network perfectly balances our focus between ourselves and other people. But in the narcissistic brain, it glitches. It completely traps their cognition on the self. Meanwhile, their default mode network is hyperactive during social interactions. To put that in plain English, they are physically trapped in this endless loop of me mode, which biologically prevents them from processing another person's emotional distress. Mind-blowing, right?
But you have to wonder, why would human evolution even allow such a destructive brain structure to stick around? Well, evolutionary psychologist Marco Del Giudice proposes a pretty chilling truth. These traits survived because they offer a primal short-term advantage. Think about it. Superficial charm, ruthlessness, an inflated sense of self, these actually predict short-term mating success and a really fast rise to leadership. It's a high-risk evolutionary adaptation. The tragedy, obviously, is that while they might win in the short term, this behavior destroys the long-term social bonds we actually need for genuine human connection, almost always ending in deep social rejection.
Section 3. The origin story. Schemas and the wounded inner child.
Let's peel back another layer and look at the psychological crime scene that actually forges this broken neurobiology. Listen to this quote from schema therapy expert Wendy Bahari. She says of the narcissistic child, they become a surrogate for the parent's unmet needs. They hear, "You're perfect, but also not enough." Just let the emotional gravity of that sink in for a second. Narcissism is so often born in an environment of extreme emotional neglect mixed with parental overvaluation. The child is praised for their performance, sure, but they are never loved for their true self, and that creates this terrifying shame-based inner critic that the narcissist will spend their entire adult life desperately trying to outrun.
Schema therapy deconstructs this trauma beautifully. It reveals 3 core schemas driving the narcissist. Number 1, emotional deprivation. This is a deep, unconscious belief that their emotional needs will just never be met by anyone. Number 2, defectiveness and shame, a hidden, agonizing sense of being fundamentally flawed. And number 3, entitlement. But see, entitlement here isn't just plain arrogance. It's a desperate defense mechanism demanding special rules just to protect that defective, walled-off inner child. Their healthy adult mode was completely starved of development.
Section 4. The mechanism of abuse. The addiction to supply.
Okay, let's look at the relationship power dynamics and completely reframe their toxic behavior. Because they have no healthy adult mode and no internal emotional thermostat, they are forced to rely on what the DSM-5 alternative model calls narcissistic supply. This is external input, whether that's admiration, attention, or literally the emotional pain and distress of their partner. They must violently and compulsively extract this supply from the people around them just to regulate their own unstable identity. They are, quite literally, addicted to you as a regulatory mechanism for their own self-esteem.
And this reliance leads us to the chilling, highly formulaic stages of narcissistic abuse that victims unknowingly walk right into. Step 1 is love bombing. This is where they project the illusion of a perfect, highly attentive soulmate to gain your absolute trust. Step 2 is devaluation. Once they've got you hooked, they begin eroding your reality to establish superiority. And then step 3 is exploitation. This is the systematic extraction of your emotional, financial, and psychological resources to feed their supply.
Now, this whole cycle requires specific psychological weapons to function. These maladaptive manipulation tactics include gaslighting, which makes the victim question their own sanity, triangulation, where they recruit third parties to undermine you, projection, where they take their own toxic traits and actually blame you for them, the silent treatment, which is basically emotional starvation used as punishment, and negging, those little backhanded compliments designed to chip away at your self-worth. These weapons are deployed not just out of random cruelty, but to maintain absolute dictatorial control over you. Because remember, you are their external emotional regulator.
I really want to highlight the unique danger of the covert trap here. Covert narcissists often attach themselves to very strong, capable, empathetic partners. They weaponize their own vulnerability, drawing you in to save them. But beneath the surface, they deeply resent your success because it triggers their own inadequacy. It turns into the slow, agonizing erosion of your reality. They'll subtly sabotage your career or isolate you from friends, all while claiming they are the one who is suffering. It is a terrifying masterclass in psychological extraction.
Section 5. Resolution. The hard truth about change. And this brings us to the question every single victim eventually asks. Can they be fixed? Well, here is the hard scientific truth. We have to separate people with narcissistic traits from those with full narcissistic personality disorder. Someone with mere tendencies actually has the capacity to own their actions, feel genuine remorse, and with therapy, they can minimize these patterns over time. But full NPD? The structural collapse is so severe and the defense mechanisms are so rigidly baked into their neurobiology that they fundamentally lack accountability. Deep structural change in someone with full NPD is exceptionally rare and monumentally difficult.
So if you find yourself in the crosshairs of this behavior, evidence-based survival strategies are your only real defense. First, you must maintain firm, unwavering boundaries. You have to mute your emotional reactions. Basically, detach completely, because your emotional distress is the exact supply they're looking to extract. Educate yourself so you can see the manipulation tactics coming from a mile away. Never, ever engage in arguments or try to justify your reality to them. They aren't looking for the truth, they're just looking for control. And finally, you must prioritize extreme self-care and, wherever possible, get absolute distance.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought. We've deconstructed the brain deficits, the childhood schemas, and this hollow pursuit of supply. We know that everything they project is a highly orchestrated defense mechanism to hide a massive psychological void. So I leave you with this. If the self they present to the world is a complete illusion, who is actually in the room with you? Really think about that. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning what lies beneath the surface and never stop digging for the deepest psychological truth.